Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my phantom thoughts. In this episode, we are wrapping up the text of Muster, a guide to playing D&D in the wargaming way, and we're going to have more from Tales of the Dragon Slayers. So the last section here of Muster, a Primer for War, Advice for Playing D&D in the Wargaming Way, before the appendices, is entitled The Nihilistic Void. Wargaming D&D has a bold feature that is fairly rare in role-playing games. It involves real victory and defeat. It is real in the same way that sports contests are real. Success yields glory, and defeat causes shame and frustration. For the game to be powerful and meaningful, transformative, you have to get into this vibe, start caring about it like that. The game being exhilarating in success and disappointing in failure is, I think, at the heart of the greatest paradox and peril that the wargaming way faces. If winning really is fun, then why not just keep doing it? What manner of man is the referee who delights in defeat? I think D&D abandoned real challenge historically largely because it takes effort and clarity to maintain the paradoxical idea of the neutral referee position, a functionary of the game who, of course, would like to see the player succeed and prosper, but who nevertheless watches upon the proceedings like a hawk, ruthlessly striking down that which is weak, unfortunate, and untrue. Grace and defeat. As with anybody who actually plays D&D by its rules, I've been party to many defeats and failures over time. Some have been exciting races to the finish line, faltering at the last moment. Others have been hilarious comedies of error, and some have been utterly unfeeling, meaningless stomps where promising characters, exhilarating adventure hooks, and unique campaign positions are annihilated for no good reason whatsoever. The dice just go that way, and here we are, lost beyond human reason. A lot of effort and hopes went into the dungeon, and the only thing that came back was nothing. Nothing came back. My pet name for the inhuman nature of loss in D&D is the nihilistic void. It's a monster somewhat different in nature from what you encounter in most sports, due to the way D&D is not played against human participants, and therefore there is nobody celebrating a victory when our side loses. There's just the void. It's even worse than most solo sports like track and field or golf or such, as the setups and preparations are so arduous and every success of greater scope necessarily builds upon past successes. The best comparisons are hobbies like mountaineering or amateur rocketry. Well, failure to reach the peak implies wasting all the time, training, and preparation that went into the expedition. You risk the nihilistic void by reaching for the glory of success. I've been known to characterize the game as a masochistic exercise in failure, engaged by those who like salty licorice and just generally only feel alive under hardship. I absolutely do encourage people to get a taste, but if that first defeat is not for you, if it just leaves you depressed, then maybe let's play something else. There are plenty of games out there that do not deal in the currency of the void. But for those who can stand it, here's the positive facet, the glorious truth. Every time we lose, the encounter with the void affirms the authenticity of our play. The sacrament of the void, when we come upon it, is us touching the reality of the game. It really is a game of victory and loss. And we really can make wrong moves and actually lose in this exercise. It's not theater. The referee is not fudging for us. And this means that when we do win, the victory is real as well. I will not abandon you. The insightful RPG theorist Maggie Baker once classified the variety of gaming group social contracts into two classes. Nobody Gets Hurt is a game where the emotional stakes are low. Technical guardrails are effective, and punches are pulled. If you do bruise another player's feelings, it's your fault, and you should say sorry and adjust to it. I Will Not Abandon You is a game that, in a certain sense, seeks the hurt. The players consensually commit emotionally and play hard, and it is possible that you will get upset. This is all right. We expected it. The group will not make it awkward or dissociate from your hurt. We'll work through it together. In some places, Meg's analysis has since been taken to mean that there is a good kind of game and a bad kind of game, but that is, of course, not the gist of it. I would say that because the game I have been trying to describe here is of the latter kind, wargaming way, when encouraged as a powerful activity with potential for personal growth, may well cause you to get upset. It is arguably one of the core elements of why we humans contest in sports to train, to grow, to withstand failure, pick ourselves up, and keep living. We can't have that if nobody gets hurt. This is not to say you can't play nobody gets hurt in the wargaming way. Of course you can. Just make sure to construe the game's subject matter and processes in a way that emotionally alienates the players from the game events, victories and defeats both. Keep it casual. Maybe get rid of character death. That's a very high profile, particular detail that often features as a sticking point in this regard. Or just keep character relationships jokey and don't mind too much about what happens to them. But that's basically a choice between being casual and being serious. If you want to get the most out of this game or any game, you will go further at some point. And if you do, I think that Meg is absolutely right about the correct kind of social contract to be doing it with. The players need to support each other and be there for each other if somebody does get hurt. What this not abandoning looks like varies widely between cultures. So I won't tell you to go and hug that player who lost a loved character. Your group might or might not be like that. Mine generally aren't. Finns aren't very touchy-feely. Here it's more like you let the players stew for the rest of the session without drawing attention to their being upset and then see afterwards if they want to talk about it. Very situational, all of this. I can, however, tell you what emotional abandonment also often looks like. When you're uncomfortable with another player's pain, you belittle it in an effort to force the game back to being casual. Perhaps you think that this is a nobody gets hurt game. Plus, you're a bit of an ass and think that it's the upset player's fault that they're upset. So now it's on you to apply a bit of metaphorical stick to make them realize where they are and stop crying like a little girl. So you joke about their loss, maybe say something like, it's not such a big deal, man up, or whatever. Belittle their pain. That sure works in the sense that this player will never ever commit emotionally to the game again. They'll learn to play casually because they know that when playing with you, the reward for being serious and maybe getting a bit upset by a loss is humiliation. All this can apply to other things than just losing player characters in D&D, by the way. If you think about situations where players get upset and lose their composure, those are the situations under deliberation here. But of course, if there's one regular aspect of the game that can sneak up on you and frustrate the most jaded of souls, it is the nihilistic void of loss. The mid-tier crisis point. The nihilistic void has a big effect on the nature of the game. Once you face it and see it, the entire game cannot help but start orienting towards it. This is the nature of the game, so nothing to worry about in particular. You learn to appreciate the authenticity of being metaphorically kicked in the groin, or you find some nicer game to play instead. However, I would also posit that there exists an inherent creative paradox in the nature of wargaming D&D, an insidious, emergent interaction that may well explain much about how the game has changed historically. I like to call this emergent feature the mid-tier crisis point for reasons that'll become evident. The issue is that the emotional stakes presented in the game are not constant. The further you progress as an adventurer, the more effort the player has invested in them. For this reason, we cannot just claim that you'll get inured to the nihilistic void. Maybe you're fine with losing a character you just created. Maybe you're fine with losing a character who stumbled into some minor success. But we can never say that you are inured to the void in its entirety because the game doesn't seem to have any practical cap for how far you can fall. The higher you climb, the more you commit emotionally, and the greater you fall. Meanwhile, the one constant of the game is its loss condition, losing your character. That's the baseline against which success is measured. Thus, the creative paradox: to succeed further in D&D, you must be willing to play for ever higher stakes, with relatively less success to be had against the ever-increasing risk of loss. It depends on particulars, but I think that at some point in the campaign there comes a time when the paradoxical demand of ever more risk for ever less success becomes unacceptable. I think I generally see it looming somewhere in the mid-levels, between 10,000 and 100,000 XP totals. You've put so much work into the character that risking their life for marginal further gains starts seeming insane to an outside observer, not in the throes of the gambling. I think that the existence of this emergent failure of the game explains a fair bit about why the game texts are the way they are. They're trying to dodge the nihilistic void and afford you the space to keep playing. Whether this is what one should do is, of course, a philosophical question, goes into the nature of the game. But here are various ideas I've seen for how to resolve the mid tier crisis point. The game has a level limit. It could be the case that all characters who achieve level 4 or 6 or whatnot are retired. The campaign is about low level adventuring, or there could be a soft limit with players encouraged to let their best characters out to pasture while continuing to play others. The crisis point is averted by never progressing to press your nose against it. Stop playing. After playing for a year or two, we've managed to get some characters up to the mid levels. However, one wrong move and now the party died. Isn't it a natural place to end the campaign? I don't know if this is a solution as such, but it is an end. Success inflation. Making success easy naturally moves the very concept of the mid tier play numerically far further away. You play a 6th level character and feel like they're 3rd level by the old reckoning. If it's easy to get to the 6th level, then perhaps we can withstand losing the occasional 6th level character now and then. You can always make more. Of course, this all is hardly a solution, merely rearranging the deck chairs on a sinking ship. Become theatrical. The historical mainline of D&D development solved the crisis point by shifting from real challenge to pretend challenge. Adding enough encounter balancing, resurrection rules, and dice fudging will absolutely achieve a game of D&D where it's safe enough to play without having to worry overmuch about losing more characters than the group can emotionally afford. New mode of play. Name level domain play never became a fully established thing for D&D, but it did suggest a wargaming solution to the crisis point. If the game were to change at higher levels, switching topics to something where character death is not the very definition of losing, then we could still have a war game even without characters too valuable to risk routinely, right? I speak of the crisis point as someone who sees it from below, but does not truly know what lies beyond. Perhaps somebody has played hard, legitimately challengeable D&D to the heights where losing your character becomes unacceptable, and can tell us whether there is a game out there. I hope to explore the possibilities myself as we manage to advance our campaign to the crisis point. Right, so moving beyond the text. Now, a lot of old school advice I've seen on playing old school style OSR games and other games that don't identify themselves as OSR or just as old school or original school or something along that matter is the advice of playing in an open world sandbox where time passes at a regular rate between sessions, and as a result, because of actions you've taken in the game, a character may be unavailable to play week by week by week if you're playing weekly, for example. If a character is on a long journey, or if they're doing some sort of training, if they're doing some sort of research, they might not be available, and so that it's encouraged and even necessary in that particular way of play that players have a stable of characters to play from. They create other characters and they play those in the week when their first character they created, or possibly their main character, perhaps there's a main character for them, is not available for play. Now, that would seem to be, and I believe he discussed this earlier in the book. It's been a while since that section discussing playing multiple characters. In fact, I'm sure he did. But this section of the book would seem to imply that there is an attachment to characters that I think a lot of people in the OSR sphere would relate more to modern styles of war games, to indie games, to story games, to other types of games with different labels on them, that they wouldn't consider that maybe the wargaming way. And I myself went into this book with the idea that the wargaming way would be more along the lines of viewing the characters as playing pieces on the board almost. Maybe a step more personal than that, because you're playing an individual each place along the way, unless you have a couple of henchmen or hirelings or something that you also get to make decisions for, roll the dice for, but you're primarily playing one person. So it would be a little more personal than just, a skirmish war game, but still it would be more detached. So this section, probably as much as anything in the book, sort of surprised me. That playing in the wargaming way is a way that has to get giving meaning to play. And it's something he talked about, and something I'm not sure I've 100% wrapped my brain around all throughout this book about gaming with a purpose, gaming with deciding when you start the campaign what you're intending to simulate. And I think that implies that there's a deeper connection to your character than just, hey, we're playing a game. And especially when he started talking about the one of the ways to deal with that nihilistic void of the potential of losing a character you care about is you go the nobody gets hurt route, and sometimes that's playing the game in a jokey way, which is also interesting because I see in certain tribes, in those who advocate old school play and playing by the old school rules, that they talk about, you know, stables of characters, and then you don't have to worry about character death that much, and it doesn't affect you that much. And they are, when they talk about some of their sessions that they play, there's a lot of joking going on. There's jokey names, there's jokey tenure. They take a movie or TV show character and adapt it to the personality of their character, and it's usually something comedic, something funny. And but these are the same people that advocate a very old school style of game, and in many cases are very vehement that D&D is a war game. It is a war game, and they'll say it over and over again in their tweets, in their posts on their blogs, in their videos that they make for YouTube. D&D is a war game, and they're very serious about that. But then there's this jokey manner, which would tend to contradict with what this book talks about as playing in a wargaming way. So some interesting concepts that put different ways of thinking, or ways of thinking that I have in the past experienced and seen as people advocating what they believe is an old school style play, and at the same thing adapting something that seems more along with the connections this book makes to a more new school vibe of play, which is not a connection I made in those statements that I've seen on those various videos, blog posts, etc. as I was seeing them. But now that I've read it in this book, not the author specifically saying that they're related, but putting these contrasting styles about the wargaming way, and how you move in and out of it is interesting. It's caused me to make connections that, well, they may not actually be there because it may all be my brain, but that I didn't see before. And it's interesting that the author also talks about how domain level play could potentially offer maybe an off ramp of, is the risk of playing a long term character that has advanced so far too much that you just simply have to retire the character, but you still want to play the character, but you don't want to lose the character? And is domain level play where you may have different sets of challenges and goals, and there could be, heavy loss within the game without that loss being character death, may have a solution to what he calls the mid tier problem, the mid tier issue. And that's something that I've seen other groups, I don't know if struggle is the correct word, but grappling with online, of that transition between being mainly an adventuring character and adventuring party and the domain level play, because the downtime constraints, and there's activities that would maybe have normally taken place in downtime in between adventures at the lower levels, rise to taking over more and more and more of the time of the character, to the point where even as I said before, they're not available because they're doing these not adventuring things. They're not available for a session to adventure because they're too busy running a fiefdom. They're too busy running a church, running a thieves guild, uh, starting up a mage school, or taking on apprentices, and doing research and making potions and spells and things of that nature, or looking into the fabric of reality using magic. So, and that's something that transition has been grappled with. How do you play that way? How do you transition from one style of campaign to another style of campaign? And what are the benefits for it? How do the mechanics work out? How does it affect the level of involvement and the level of work for a game master and the players? So that's an interesting idea. Will it take away from, you know, I guess the question is, does it solve the problem of having a character of such high level that you don't want to lose them to character death? Not by necessarily, as the author suggests, by giving you other ways to lose. Does it solve it by the fact that you're just not going to be able to play that character as much, where you're not going to be putting the character at risk of death, because both the opportunity for that character to go adventuring and be at risk are going to lessen, but also your ability to play, how many sessions you're going to be able to play that character, disappear. So that's an interesting concept, and one that I see again explored throughout the RPG sphere, and in some cases just avoided. There are newer games that you only play the character up to 6th level, 10th level, whatever, and then that's all there is in the rules, because you've raised that character to the ultimate level where you can't really play that game anymore. You're going to be playing a different game after that. And I guess the last thing I want to mention is, I also see in here the author I believe, tying back to the sport. Well, I don't believe he's actually said it, now that I think on it. Tying back into the sportsmanship side of it. He talked in the section I went over in the last episode where I covered muster. He was talking about sportsmanship and what that meant, and a lot of that was about the play between players and sportsmanship within the game table, within the gaming group, of supporting one another. In this case, supporting one another, being part of a team. Essentially, you're part of a team, and you're sensitive to each other's emotions and joys and losses. And it reminded me of a video I saw on social media, and I wish I could think of exactly where I saw it so I could credit it. Where the person making the video was playing, essentially, it's the thing where they cut back and forth between themselves playing essentially two different characters, and one of them was upset about something or sad about something, and the other one came in and said something like, "I can see you're upset about blah blah blah," and said, "Yeah, I am," and then said, "Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to?" Well, I believe it was, "Do you want a solution? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to be left alone?" And the crux of the video was, a lot of times we encounter people in an emotional state, and we immediately move into one of those things, and or perhaps, as the book suggested, sometimes we make light of it and just try to make a joke out of it, and in that process belittle the person's feelings. And this video, what gives a point at it, you know, give people the options when they're in that state of mind, or whatever it's about, that they can, if they want to talk about it, let them know that ears are open. If they want to be left alone, let them know we'll leave you alone. If they want solutions, let them know you'll work with them through with them on solutions. And the second character also said, "Hey, and you can always change your mind later." So that was something that just came to mind reading that section of the book. So don't really have a good way to wrap that up. So so I think I'm just going to end this, because we're pushing well over 20 minutes now in this section. I don't know if this is the very end of muster. Uh, I've I've read through and covered the areas I want to cover. Like I said, there are sections of the book that are just about what this author sees about the history of the way the D&D game developed, and there's a glossary, and there's some little stories in there, and maybe I'll go back through those stories and see if something I think uh, can bring a lot of the threads together, or maybe I'll give it another once through again and see if I can bring some threads together, or kind of summarize what I see as what the author is promoting as playing D&D the wargaming way. So there probably will be one more episode covering this. I don't know if it'll be the next regular episode, the next episode, or the next regular episode that'll do that, depending on how things shake out. But that is something I want to do to kind of wrap things up. But as far as the text is concerned, that's it. We've reached the end of muster. A thank you to everybody that has stuck with me this long, especially to those of you who have provided feedback. I think there's been a lot of interesting conversations on that. I hope there will be more conversations, that they won't just stop completely. Maybe we'll pick up some threads and talk about them. And I'm sure from reading this book, the way it has pulled into my head other things that I have seen and read and heard and watched, that as I continue on this RPG journey and I read and see and watch things, that I'll be drawing on this book as well. And it's something I want to go through again. There's a lot in here that like I said, I don't think I've fully wrapped my head around, and maybe it's something that I'll come back to 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and be a better informed consumer of the book. But that is Muster, a Primer for War, Advice for Playing D&D in the Wargaming Way, published by Arkenstone Publishing, written by, I guess I should have been to that page. I think I'm going to try this one more time. Where is the title page? Iro Tuvonen from Finland. Published in 2002. Available digitally for free on DriveThruRPG. There's a link in my show notes to that. There has been in every episode where I've covered Muster. It's pay what you want, but it's he said on his blog, and as he was doing the campaign, he wanted to be out there for free. And they do also have an option to purchase a paperback like I have, and it's held up pretty well so far. I know sometimes the DriveThruRPG paperbacks have a bad reputation, but this is held up pretty well so far. So, but then of course I'm very sensitive about my books, so your mileage may vary. Anyway, that's it. I'm wrapping up. Moving on to the rest of the episode.
And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers.
A lot going on in the world of the Dragon Slayers, so let's get to it. Day 113, Fort Etchark. Events were proceeding quickly at the fort and the town of King's Pass. When Nantor had seen the man in the cage where he had left a wolf the previous night, he knew immediately that he and the others had not been assailed by an ordinary wolf pack. He reported to the fort commander that werewolves had attacked the party, and immediately the guards of the fort that evening had been questioned. They confirmed one of the clerics had returned, and a search for him was begun. Nantor then inquired among the many temples and shrines for those who could deal with lycanthropy, and potentially himself and the cleric, and for certain, Cudgel. Colonel Edhart also dispatched a group of soldiers to the battle site to search for survivors. By day's end, Nantor had secured the services of 2 clerics to treat himself and Cudgel. The cleric that had been with them had been found and was already undergoing a ritual of purification. The soldiers had returned with the bodies of Prier, the other cleric, and the archers. A message would be dispatched to Sir Gus's group in the morning, and discussions began on how to discover a method of finding any lycanthropes that may have infiltrated the fort or the town. Noel's lair. Gasher, the Noel's new chief, had his noon meal interrupted by a guard. Sire, Ettins are approaching from the west. Gasher rose from the table and went outside, blood from his meal still on his face. Outside, he and his guard squared up to the approaching 2-headed giants, prepared for another battle. Gasher thought back on the loss of the ogres, bugbears, hobgoblins, orcs, and trolls. Perhaps this would be another hit to the cause of the gnashing teeth, or maybe the start of a new chapter.
So we can adjudicate this right now with some percentile dice and a reaction roll. And with a 64, it's uncertain, but 55% prone towards positive. So one more roll. And here we go. One of the Ettins stepped forward from the others, and Gasher stepped up to him. We've come looking for a home. Seems like you've got a nice one here. Gasher looked him in the eye and smiled. Too small for you. Almost too small for us, lousy humans. But there is a nice big cave, just a little further to the south. Abuts right up to the road. Good rating here, if you're interested. The giant, two-headed monster stepped closer and looked at him with 4 baleful eyes. Then the 2 heads turned and looked towards each other, and a hand came down on Gasher's shoulder. You talk, Big Noel. We like that. We'll check out that cave, and then we'll see what we can do. Perhaps, said Gasher, as the giant's about turned to leave, you would share in our most recent meal. Meal? Some good horse meat here. Horse. Can't wait. At the party's keep. See, sir, there they are. The footman pointed to the nearby hills. Major Domo Briscoe, the newly appointed Castellan of the keep, nodded. You weren't embellishing, soldier. Those are very large goats. What should we do, sir? We're going to need livestock here eventually. Perhaps if we're careful, he turned with a grin, we won't have to wait. The 4th keep along the road, just south of the knolls. Sir Gus, Captain Prain, Master Greystone, this is Major Kadima, leader of the mercenaries that challenged the knolls with that last caravan. Lieutenant Maynard made introductions as the expedition took lunch. Major, Gus nodded. Please join us. And offered a plate of deer meat. As the major sits, we hear there's more to the knolls than we thought. That's putting it mildly, Kadima replied, taking a bite. We thought we could just push through. And if it had been just that one group of knolls, we probably would have. So they found allies, Prain asked. Allies, impressed creatures, I don't know what they were, just that there were hundreds of them. What exactly did you see? What happened up there? Prain leaned in. Kadima chewed, then swallowed. What's it worth to you? He stared the captain down. A bag landed at his feet, jingling. He picked it up, opened it, smiled at the gold inside, then looked up at Gus. Well then. After the mercenary left, Gus, Edgar, and Prain planned. Sounds like the knolls put together quite a force, Prain stated. If they're still there, Edgar interjected. Those creatures don't tend to cooperate for long, and if many of them were routed away, at the very least, mused Gus, the original knolls and a lot of orcs. Given their losses, we should be on par with their numbers, Prain offered, if not a slight advantage. Probably a quality advantage with our more seasoned troops in the Dakamiri, Gus put in. Knolls are plenty tough, Edgar pointed out. True, Gus responded. Best not to commit all our forces all at once. You and I may have to be the difference. So we are still approaching, Prain inquired. I see no reason why not. Giving them more time may yield them more allies. We'll follow our plan. March out the day, camp, and catch them in the late morning tomorrow. Better get things moving then, Prain rose. Gus clapped Edgar on the shoulder. Let's go, my friend. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, these are for your eyes only. I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only.
that's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. Just, I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/phantom thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.